You are listening to the SDSU podcast presented by the East Village Times with your hosts Andre Hagberdian and Paul Garrison. Welcome, listeners, back to the SDSU podcast. I'm your host, Andre Hagberdian. We'll be joined shortly by my co-host, Paul Garrison, as always. This is episode 76. One of the things that we wanted to do as we transitioned this podcast from, football only to more of a broader SDSU athletics podcast was to bring interviews with coaches and players that we don't typically get to hear from more often. And I think, that decision for us to expand was coming on the heels of the San Diego State softball team making it to their first ever super regional. And, one of the first names that came up in terms of who do we want to talk to, who do we want to interview, it was the head coach of the softball team, Stacey Nuveman Deniz. And we had a chance to do that this week, Paul and I. And this episode is that interview with Coach. And it was a really great interview, not just talking about what the team accomplished, what they have looking forward, but also talking about Coach's records and career as a softball player and how, that's helped her, become an assistant coach, be a hitting instructor, and then now a head coach for the last 2 years and hopefully for many years to come. Let's get to the interview with Coach, and then Paul and I will be back to give you our takeaways from it. We want to welcome head softball coach of San Diego State, Stacey Nuveman Deniz, to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you taking the time. Spring for San Diego State athletics was a pretty good time of year. The basketball team, made it to the Final Four, the national championship game. It really galvanized Aztec Nation, the buzz, the support. You guys kind of fed off of that and made it to your first super regional against Utah. Ended up ranked 18 and 19 in the final polls, which is the highest for the school at the end of the season. How do you, as a head coach, how do you reflect back on what you guys accomplished and how the season went?
I'll be honest, in this business, there's not a whole lot of time to celebrate, right? Because we have an awesome season, and then it's go time in terms of recruiting and try to capitalize on that in all the other ways as well. But at the same time, when I do have the quiet moments and can kind of come down from the busy schedule to really just look back and I'm really proud. I'm really proud of the way we played, the way we competed, the way we represented. You mentioned San Diego State athletics and just the kind of the year that we had as a department, and just really thankful to have the opportunity to be a part of this program in terms of the global athletic department and just represent the way that we did and have and can continue to and plan to continue to. That's obviously the challenge is to follow that up, right? You have a great season and you do some really awesome, really special things, and then the next level is, okay, how do we repeat that? How do we do that again and even go beyond and punch that ticket to Oklahoma City and to the Women's College World Series? So I'm up for the challenge. I'm excited for that, and really proud, but also excited to move forward and take this to the next level.
To get to the super regional, you had to win the LA regional, hosted by your alma mater, UCLA. How did it feel to be playing back there or coaching back there, your team, winning that regional? You didn't even get to play UCLA to win it. How was that like for you?
Well, so going back there is always kind of a trick for me because, and I've been doing it, we play there most years. We'll get up to LA at some point. Not every year, but most years. And it's just, I guess over time it's gotten easier. I will say the first couple of years, it was like, this feels really weird to be in the first base dugout. And it almost felt like I was a bad alumnus to, want to beat them. At the same time, that's for sure worn off. And I always say, I want the Bruins to win every game except for when they're playing the red and black. And I mean that. I really do. I'm a proud UCLA alumni. I want to see them do well, but obviously for us, that's my top priority. And so to go in there and knowing that UCLA was as good as they were, we knew we had a tough challenge ahead of us. If you had told me we were going to win the LA Regional without playing UCLA, I would have lost a lot of money on that bet because just, nobody could have foreseen that situation kind of happening. At the same time, it is what it is. Like the path was what it was for us, and we took care of the business that we had in front of us, and got ourselves to Utah and competed valiantly as well. So again, it was emotional to be back at UCLA. I know the TV cameras caught me getting a little verklempt, when we clinched, and just doing it on that field, looking around and taking in the sights was pretty wild for me, just personally and obviously professionally as well, but really on a personal level, it meant a lot to me.
2 weeks before you guys went up to UCLA, you all went up there before and played them. I mean, was that intentional to have that game at the end of the year to kind of set the stage for the postseason?
Well, so we had a terrible week for a bye week. It's that weird in between where it was literally the last conference weekend, and then it was a tournament. So we were okay. We don't want to take the weekend off. We also don't want to go play a full slate of games. So it was like, how can we get a little bit of work in and have something that's going to mean something at the same time? And so it worked out that UCLA had their bye weekend as well as LMU did, and LMU is another postseason team. So we knew it was going to be a good challenge. Not necessarily expecting that we would go back to UCLA for regionals, but I think in the end, it ended up being a nice strategy move, maybe unintentionally. I'll be honest, maybe unintentionally, because number one, part of the postseason, I think the atmosphere and the energy is the mystique of it. It's like, ooh, I go to this site and I'm playing this program in this facility, and you make it bigger than it really needs to be. And so I think in our case, we played at UCLA in the fall. So we've been on that field. We've been in those dugouts. We've been on that venue, at that venue. Same thing with, as you mentioned, the 2 weeks before the postseason, been here, done that. So it almost takes some of the air out of the balloon in a good way and just kind of deflates it to, hey, this is just softball. We got to go play 7 innings against whoever's in the other dugout on this field and take care of business. And so I don't know that it was totally intentional in that way, but I think it served a great purpose for us in the long run.
Talking about taking the air out and playing, I think the thing that stood out to me the most in watching that postseason run was the joy that your team plays with. I don't know if that's the right word, but there's this great mix of enthusiasm, appreciation, fun, competitive spirit that I'm calling joy. That was very apparent. Is that the right word? And if so, where does that come from?
I think that's a great word. We talk about all of those things. I mean, you did a nice job of just describing the culture of our program. That is how we aspire to play. Can I say honestly that we show up every day from February to June in that same way? No, and I think that's probably an area of growth for us is the consistency of that. But I think, when people talk about our run and I hear, descriptions as you just shared, that's what makes my heart swell, because that's what we want for this program. That's what we want for our players to play in that way. And the fact that it showed through and came through the TV screen means everything, because I really do believe that joy, that appreciation, all of those things, the competitiveness, but also the connection piece, that's what makes a program sustainable and successful consistently. Because we can't just play for the result. And yes, we don't shy away from talking about we're here to win games. We want to win. We want to be winning is fun. And we talk about that too. But how do we get there is we play with joy. We trust each other. We play as a connected unit. And really, in a lot of ways, without us, my goal is to have a player-led program where they play the game. And yes, we're here with the guardrails, and we're here to support, and we're here to, keep them on track and help create the vision and all that. But at the end of the day, when the games are, they're playing in those big moments, I'm not on the field. I am very squarely in the dugout with a clipboard in my hand, and our preparation is done at that point. The way that we played at the end is absolutely, I think, a testament to the culture of the program and the what we're building and how we're building it, and the way that we want our players to play free and loose and trust the game, trust the process, trust each other, and then the results will come. And I think that's really what we saw happen in on full display. And it was really, really awesome and a lot of fun.
The player-led theme is something we hear all the time when we talk about the football team, because I think Brady Hoke's philosophy is the same. Like, if the coaches are leading the team and the players, that's not going to work. You need the players to lead because they're the ones on the field. And that's why he cultivates this senior leadership group so heavily when he as a football coach. And I think that's what works so well for them.
Well, player-led is kind of I would say almost a new age concept in the sense that, when I played in college, and it's been a long time, we won't throw the years out there, but and trust me when I say this, I'm very close with my college coach, Sue Enquist. So I say this with all due respect. She didn't ask me my opinion. She didn't care what I thought. She wasn't too concerned with my feelings about what we were doing or how we were doing it. But that was a different time. So I think different generations were more okay with and willing to buy in and just kind of follow. And I think the generation we coach now in this, 2023 and beyond, I would say it extends past, the last maybe 5, 10, 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 years, is players want to be heard. They must be heard. They must be seen. And I know that sounds kind of a buzzword, I need to be seen, be felt. That's true. They need to feel like they have a say in what's happening. Now, that's not to say that they're running the show, but in integrating their opinions, their thoughts, and ultimately that's what builds buy-in. I can't just drop in here, guys, this is what we're going to do and just expect they're going to follow me. Mm-mm. They got to say, hey, come with me. Here's what I'm thinking. Let's, get your thoughts, get your input. Now we create a plan together. And then next thing you know, not only are your leaders following, but the other followers are following. And then you've got momentum. So, it's a dance. I don't have it perfected by any stretch of the imagination, but I think this is what the future of athletics in college looks like. And I think now even more so when you're talking about, you have, not maybe on our team, but there are programs where you got guys making more money than their coaches in NIL. It's more, it has to be more collaborative. It just has to. And it's not there's no perfect science to it. There's no mathematical, this much percent of you and this much percent of me. It's got to be a fluid situation. But I think that's what's going to be successful in the long run is having them. And to use an example from our team, and I didn't even, in the moment, I didn't notice this, but someone pointed out to me in the first game, right? The first game of our super regional against Utah, the first couple innings were dicey. I don't know if you remember, but we made some errors and both teams made some errors. It was like the moment was pretty big and everybody was a little tight. And at one point, I think we had made an error and given up a run or two. And our infield, no coaches present, our infield called the group together. And, of course, the commentators are talking and the cameras are showing the players. And the way that those 6 infielders connected to each other and just like they calmed themselves down. They didn't need me to come out and, okay, guys, they came together and just looked each other in the eyes. Hey, guys, we got this. Let's just take a deep breath, slow down, let's just relax a little bit. And they settled in. And then the rest of the game, we know what happened. We ended up winning the ball game. That to me was like, okay, there it is. That's it. I don't have to be out there. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I got to go out there and kind of be the voice. But when we have our players managing the emotions of the game without us, we've prepared them the way that they need to be prepared. And it's powerful. And I felt like that example was a very specific time where you saw that come together and play out in a really, really awesome way.
Yeah, that's, you spoke earlier about once you're successful, the key is what are you going to do next? Getting back there, moving forward, advancing farther. Obviously, to add on to the player-led theme, you're going to have to rely on some returning starters next year, plus maybe some new pieces that either didn't play or are new to the team. Who are some of the top names we should be looking out for that you're going to lean on as the head coach to kind of lead that charge next year?
The really cool part of what happened this year is the majority of our kind of key pieces are returning. So, Allie Light was our kind of go-to ace in the circle. She'll be back for her senior year. So, we expect her to do some really special things, not just on the field, but also off as a leader in those ways. Callie Decker will be a junior behind the dish. She was, again, a key piece for us all season long in the clubhouse, on the field, all of that. We're bringing in some really great transfers. We got some young freshmen coming in. And then that's just, those are a couple of names to be highlighted. But, the experience, Kenna Brocky's returning, another rising senior with 4 years of experience, 5 years of experience, just about. We're in a good spot. We've got people that have now played on that stage, the stage that they all aspired to play on, they've now played on. And they felt what it felt like. And I think even I would say they've learned some things about what they would do differently. How they would give the opportunity to go back, and if they had a do-over, what would they have done differently? How would they have maybe handled their emotions differently if they could have? I think all of us, I'll even speak for myself. I feel like I learned some things about my own kind of emotional response to that moment. I've played on the highest stage this game can offer. Been there, done that as a player, but I've never, it's my first super regional coaching experience. So even I felt myself feeling the feels. And that's the cool thing about building something, is that every step gives us information, gives us perspective as we move to the next step. So I guarantee you, if we went back, if we, snap our fingers and had a do-over, we might have had a different result, because we all experienced that for the first time together, every single one of us. So that's the cool thing about it. In the moment, it hurts and it stings to be a game away from the Women's College World Series and not be able to punch it in, but also it's perspective, it's learned, it's lessons, growth, and all that stuff is things that we can build on.
One name I wanted to bring up mainly because of a personal bias is Didi Hernandez. We went to the same high school, Crescendo Valley High School, albeit, 20 plus years apart. I remember when I saw her that she was from there, I looked her up on like the local news sites, and seeing her stats and her accolades, it was quite impressive. And, she has been a young player, played a lot, and, now she's going to be an upperclassman. Where do you kind of see her progression as she, goes into her junior year?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Didi. So Didi is just, she's the heart. She's a big piece of our kind of emotional team. A very connected player, is a competitor. We joke about Didi that she's better when the bases are loaded than she is when the bases are clean and it's a clean inning, which is just kind of weird, right? Most people would prefer to come in as a pitcher to a clean inning. She put the pressure cooker, turn it on to high, and then insert her, and she's going to be at her best. She's been so clutch for us in some really, really big moments and some tough situations that a lot of people would not want the ball in. So her coming back with the experience she has and her maturity, and again, her competitive spirit, she's her fire is very contagious for the rest of the squad. And so she's a big piece for us in a lot of those ways. And I'm going to give you a little personal tidbit about myself and Didi. Didi Hernandez and Stacey Nuveman were born in the same hospital. So I was born in Verdugo Hills Hospital, and so was Didi. So we share that little. So my mom grew up in La Cañada, so I spent time in that neck of the woods growing up.
My first job ever was the radiology file clerk at Verdugo Hills Hospital.
There it is.
Wow, small world.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna click off the Zoom and leave the two of you to finish this interview.
Yeah, what's your connection to Verdugo Hills Hospital? Do you have one? Yeah, probably not. Don't even know where that is.
No, my wife was born in LA. That's all I got. All
right, fair.
But NIL, the transfer portal, these are the hot topics of the day in college sports. How do those impact softball, and how does it, how do you address it with recruits, et cetera, and things of that nature? Yeah,
so NIL, I feel like, is kind of, in softball anyways, is coming. Mm-hmm. It's like here, but it's not. I feel like it's coming. I'm sure I know the Oklahomas and some of those like really elite programs are already in that realm. I don't know that it's really hit get to the mid-major level. We haven't really encountered it. It's something that we encourage them to do, but we're not, I wouldn't say like going up against it, like in a recruiting sense, directly. Now the transfer portal is a whole nother beast. That sucker is hot and heavy and going 24/7. It just, I think actually this week, in a couple days, that window closes. So the way it is now is it's May 15th to June 28th is that's the time. So if your name's not in the portal by the 28th, you are not eligible to compete for next season. I think we're in it. We're in it right now, and any last minute additions are going to come in the next couple of days, and then it'll shut down until next summer. As far as what's happened to the sport, it's transformative. I mean, it's been transformative for our program. It's been, we've had some really, really key transfer additions over the years, the last probably 3 or 4 specifically. That's not to say we don't have some awesome, people coming out of high school that come in and have huge impacts on our program, because we do also. But for sure, the portal has been very, very good to us. And I will say it's gotten the competition, quote unquote, it's immense. It's much harder to get impact players in terms of the competition for their I hate to say this, for their services, but it's true, right? Like their services are highly coveted. And so a player with statistics, experience, proven stuff they're hard to nab. So, we're in it. We're working hard. We've gotten a couple, actually right now we've got 3 incomers. All of them were starters and impact players in their programs, and really excited about all 3. They're going to give us some depth and create some competition. And then, we've got 3 freshmen coming in as well, a couple pitchers. We've got some really good young talent coming, as well as some experienced, transfer people to complement what we already have. So I feel like this year could be even, it was pretty darn special in 2023, but 2024 could be even more special.
Yeah, you talk about having to create buy-in and to have the players be heard. Obviously, the transfer portal, I think makes that a necessity as well. But just continuing this conversation, take us back to when you fell in love with softball, and what that process was like. And we'd love to go through, a little bit of a progression of your playing career and your progression into coaching.
How much time we got here? No, I'm kidding. I will try to be succinct. I am known for being long-winded, so I'll try to be succinct. You're doing great. Yeah. So I grew up in the LA area, just athletic family. So played all the sports. I was actually a pretty competitive basketball player. I played AAU and did the travel circuit actually before I got into softball. And then my dad coached my brother's Little League team, and he was 2 years older than I was. So he'd take me out to practices with the boys, and I'd be just, throwing, catching, hitting, doing all the things. And my dad would come home and say to my mom, "We got something here. She is right neck and neck with these older boys." And I was kind of a little bit shy in terms of my personality, but so I wasn't like just owning the field, but the skill was there. The skill set was there. And so they put me in softball, and it wasn't like an instant thing where like all other sports fell off. I mean, that again, in that time, that era, I played volleyball, I played basketball, tried swimming, and I did gymnastics for like a week and a half, and then was like, okay, that's not my sport. I played tennis, I played golf, I did all of the things, some individual, mostly team sports. And basketball, softball kind of became the 2 main. And I wasn't super sold on softball being like my sport. I mean, I was an all CIF player in basketball. And so when it came down to starting to get recruited, the schools that were recruiting me in basketball were okay, but like I was getting recruiting letters from like the big dogs, softball. So ultimately, I think we, as a family kind of realized, okay, the future is bright in softball. I could have played college basketball, but I wasn't like, I was 6 feet tall. So I wasn't like quick enough to be a guard, and I wasn't big enough to be a post inside player. So I was kind of a weird tweener space that the future wasn't as bright. So we kind of shifted gears and took more of a softball track. And again, I got fortunate to be on some really competitive travel teams kind of early on, got some exposure, and then just, pushed through until I was playing. I got invited to the junior national tryouts when I was in high school. My senior year, I actually got invited to the USA Olympic So 1996 was the first Olympics for softball. And I was in high school. I graduated high school in 96. And so it was like in 95, I was a junior in high school and I got invited to try out. It's like, what? Cool. And I went with no intention of making the team, but it was just that exposure, seeing the sport played. Literally, these are the best of the best. And so had the opportunity, played college softball at UCLA. All of that just, led the path to, I can not only play this at the very highest level of college game, but now I have the opportunity to go international and I can play on Team USA if I play my cards right and if I develop my game in the, the areas that needed development. And so did all that, went in 4-time All-American, all the things in college. And actually, while I was in college, I made my first Olympic team. So the 2000 Olympics was the starting catcher. I mean, all my playing career is kind of like storybook, right? Like I can't really, it was magical. It was really magical. And then what happened with my coaching, I was still playing. I graduated college, continued on my playing career, professional and Team USA and all that. And then it was like, okay, I got married, had my first child, tried out for made my last Olympic team with my 1-year-old son in my back pocket, literally. Was kind of like, okay, this probably I gotta slow down at some point because that lifestyle is really hard. You're traveling constantly. It's not a lot of stability, especially when you bring a child into the picture. And so my husband and I were like, okay, I think maybe it's time to make a career change. And I wasn't someone that always knew I wanted to coach. Some people are just like born coaches. I don't know that I was, but I also was like, God, I have so much knowledge. I love this game. I love the environment of a college athletics department. It's the best. It's the best time warp in the world because everyone around you is young and, fit and awesome athletes as I get older, but I love this environment. I love what college athletics are all about. And during the summer before the 2008 Olympics, San Diego State had a job open up. And my mom is actually a San Diego State alumni. Some of her very closest friends live here in San Diego. So I grew up coming around San Diego. And then we, as the USA softball team, trained in Chula Vista at the training center. So we had spent time in San Diego as well during that time frame. So I always loved San Diego. So the opportunity came up at San Diego State. It was like, okay, are we really going to do this? Because we were living in Visalia, which is like Fresno, Central California area. Are we going to really take this just jump and move our family to San Diego? So my husband had to start his career over. He's an attorney and had a pretty good job up there. Well, I literally took the call made the call from my dorm room in Beijing, China, to Coach Van Wyk, the head coach at the time, and said, I'm in. I want to be an Aztec. And so that really kind of kick-started my coaching career. And family moved to San Diego, was Coach Van Wyk's assistant coach for 13 seasons. Then she decided it was time for her to retire, and I had the opportunity to take over. And the rest is history. It was a long process to get to this point. I mean, I was a pretty old first-time assistant coach, but also very experienced in the ways of the game and all those things. So I was not your typical first-time assistant coach, but really excited that I had the opportunity to come to San Diego, a place that we wanted to live and raise our family. And I've been here for 15 years now. And it's crazy for me to think that I potentially could be at one place my whole career. And college athletics, that just does not happen. In fact, I don't know. I've never heard of another person that's done that, where they might. Now, who knows what the long-term future holds? But for now, I'm stoked on where we are and where this department is going. The fact that the Power 5 is on the burner and something that we may be sliding over to here soon. That's like, wow, I can have my cake and eat it too. I can live in San Diego. I can be in a department I'm proud of and a place that I'm excited to be and build something, and then also have the opportunity to move to a Power 5 conference. Pretty amazing. That's the long and the short of it. And here we are, year 2 now in the books for my head coaching career. So pretty excited about the future.
When we talk to collegiate basketball players, football players, baseball players, they talk about wanting to play at the next level, playing professionally. Is that even an option in softball? It's not something that I'm aware of or I see. So I'm curious what that is, if that's something that's maybe growing or trying to grow, or could be something for the future.
So there is professional softball, and actually there has been for a long time, but the challenge has been exposure, right? You mentioned you're unaware of it. That's the problem. So currently there's two professional kind of opportunities in softball. So one of them is Athletes Unlimited. Actually, last summer San Diego State hosted. They do like a shortened, they call it AUX, a championship series, and then like a shortened series, and then they do like a full, I don't know if it's like an 8-week season in the summer that happens in Chicago. We hosted the AUX season, and it's a totally different concept. Athletes Unlimited has softball, women's basketball, lacrosse, women's volleyball, indoor volleyball. So it's a multi-sport kind of concept, and it's think professional sports meets fantasy sports. So every week you redraft, and the players actually draft their teams. So the teams change week to week. It's a pretty fascinating concept. I love it. It's a mixed bag. Some people just are traditionalists and they want to root for a team, and it's like they can't get behind the concept, but it's a pretty unique concept, and the players absolutely love it. They love it. They make all the decisions. They write the lineup. They don't even have coaches. They have what they call facilitators. So anyways, that's Athletes Unlimited. Then there's another more traditional setup, and it's Women's Professional Softball, WPF is what it's called. And they have teams in Florida, Texas. I think there's one in Midwest. And that's more, there's a team in Austin. There's a team in Orlando, and they play. The Athletes Unlimited group actually has ESPN coverage. So they just finished their AUX season yesterday, as a matter of fact. And then their full championship season will be in the summer. But so there is professional softball. The challenge always is the funding for it to be a financially viable situation for both the league as well as the players. And then obviously the exposure, getting on TV and having people see it and realize that it's pretty awesome. And the level of play is so high that it, attracting people. College softball is an awesome job. College softball is on TV all the time, which is amazing. It's just now really, the sport is working hard to build a professional opportunity that's sustainable and actually, allows these players to make enough money where they don't have to have other jobs, but they can literally be supported by their professional contracts. And we're not quite there yet. We're working towards that, but there is opportunity for people to play professionally after college.
That's interesting. That's always a question I was curious about. You mentioned you were a catcher at UCLA. You're in the UCLA Hall of Fame. You're hitting records and accolades are pretty ridiculous. They're legendary. We don't have time to go through all of them, but I want to throw out some of them. So I think when you finished your career, you held the NCAA record for home runs, slugging percentage, walks, and intentional walks. Were you getting the Barry Bonds treatment where they were just walking you even with nobody on base, or what was that time like? Just going through all that.
Yeah, that was that was a time. There was a time where I definitely was getting pitched around, and I had to learn. There's a nuance to that. There's a mindset of I'm not gonna swing at junk, right? I'm not gonna swing myself out of it at bat. If they're gonna walk me, they're gonna walk me. But I'm gonna be ready, and if they miss, I got the green light. And so that I went through periods where I was overly aggressive and I was swinging at garbage and getting myself out, and then other times where I was too passive and I was taking the misses and I'd get walked, but then I was like, okay, but I could have hit that one. So once I really learned that kind of dance, again, the numbers took care of themselves. But I think what I'm probably most proud of, believe it or not, is my batting average. I mean, I definitely hit the home runs, but I still had a really high average. I didn't strike out a lot. I liked being a tough out, and if they were going to walk me, cool. But if you're going to miss, I mean, my coach at the time literally had the green light. So if they were intentionally walking me, we're talking like catch up, arm out kind of situation. She's like, get toes on the line, get all the way on the plate, and if they miss, you have the green light. And I actually hits. I got hits. I had a couple home runs on intentional walks that they just. Pitchers don't practice that very often. And so it was too good, and I'm on the plate. So I've got coverage, probably a foot off, and boop, pop my bat out. And so, so I didn't love getting walked, but also, it was what it was. If I'm getting on base this way, I'm going to get on base.
That's great. This year with everything that men's basketball did and going to a Final Four, it kind of seemed like they passed the baton to you and your team. But the parallel between you and Coach Dutcher, and you talked about being an assistant for a long time, just as he was. I mean, over the years, was that ever a conversation that you and Dutch had?
I didn't talk to him directly, but I will say that his situation became, how could I say that? A pretty awesome example of, and something that I use kind of in the negotiations, to be honest, because he was a longtime assistant. And then as Fisher was kind of starting to wind it down, they made him coach in waiting.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a basketball thing, right? Like that, I'd only ever heard of it in basketball and football.
Man.
And I asked for that designation for myself at one point. And early on, I was told no, they weren't willing to do that. And then a few years later, asked again. And actually, I did have the opportunity, and they made me coach in waiting, like officially.
Yeah.
And that was not something that was done in softball. I don't think it's ever been done anywhere. I've never heard of any other coach having that designation. But that was the university's commitment to me, that they wanted to see me take this program when Coach Van Wyk, was ready to be done. And I also, I want to be here. This is where I want to be. That was a really awesome when JD, allowed me to have that title and make that commitment to me. That was a big deal. So, I didn't talk to Dutcher specifically, but I think he was 3 years maybe before me, 3, 4. I don't know how long he's been head coach. He was definitely elevated to the head coach position before I was. And so he's got a few years ahead of me, but it's been kind of cool. And I'm sure validating for JD and the administration to see making those decisions, without having the head coach experience. That was always the challenge. It's like, well, you can't be a head coach until you're a head coach, and have that box checked. I went and coached for a summer in professional softball to get that box checked, but it's not quite the same. I think it's worked out pretty well in both of our cases in terms of taking over programs and building on what was already established. In basketball and softball, we had a great tradition here in San Diego State softball. I'm just building on that. Same thing for Dutch, right? He took something that was already awesome and is making it more awesome. And so, I'd like to think we've made it worth their while to keep us around and give us the that security that we desired and allow us to now build our programs in the way that we feel like we need to and can.
Coach Gwynn, when he was, on campus, one of the, I guess, frustrations that he ran into is he was such an elite hitter that he would just tell them to do what he did, but it didn't translate to people without that same skill. You're in that category in the way that you were able to hit as an individual. I mean, have you found maybe that some of the women that you coach aren't able to do what you do, or just in general, what is your philosophy when it comes to hitting?
Yeah. Well, I will say this. So 2 parts to that answer. One part is just to say, so when I got here, I was the hitting coach, and I was the hitting coach my whole assistant coach career. So for 13 years, when I took over as the head coach, I jumped to the pitching side. So that's a whole nother conversation. I'll set that aside. So I no longer do the hitting, but to back up, I will say that growth process was very steep in terms of understanding how to communicate something that in a lot of ways is innate. I think when you're, and I know that was Coach Gwynn's thing was, you do things, certain things as a hitter. Some of it you've been taught, but a lot of it is it's kind of just hardwired. Timing, vision, the ability to see the ball. You can't really teach all that stuff. You can improve it, but it's hard to sometimes people just have it more natural. I think he did. I think I did. And also had great coaching as well, but a lot of it was just kind of, again, hardwired. So I talk about the hitting coach that I was year 1 till year 10, not even close, learning how to communicate, understanding different learning styles, also changing with the times, the mechanical things, science and data and technology has given us more knowledge about what actually happens in a swing than what we knew before. So we were doing some things before that were that's outdated. So being able to grow and change with the game as well was part of the process for me as a hitting coach. As I've jumped over into the other side, that's been a whole new learning curve. And I'm still very much squarely on the learning curve of, how to take what I know about pitching, take what I know about, strategizing, game calling, game management, pitch calling, all those things. And then the mechanical side, spins and grips and kind of the mechanics of the actual pitching motion. And then putting it all together on the field. So that's I'm still in the midst of that. I think it's going pretty darn well for being 2 years in, but that's definitely a little bit of an Achilles heel for I think all elite athletes is really being able to meet them where they are. And maybe some of them are better than even you were. But if not, okay, how do I meet them where they are? And just, this is, they're at this level. I can't coach them at this level. I got to coach them where they are. And then we can get them to where we need them. It's tough. It's not, and I don't think every former elite athlete has been able to figure it out, to be honest, as we know. But the ones that have, I think have, the connection piece and the trust of their athletes, but also, understanding what it takes to get them. I've been there. I've been in the box in that moment. I know what that feels like. That's a perspective that helps them as long as they can build that trust and learn how to develop.
We had Coach Ryan Hopkins on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and he mentioned how all the coaches sharing, one office building on campus helps create kind of a unique atmosphere for the department. Could you speak about how that experience has been for you?
Well, the irony is that I was, I think, a minute late hopping on this call, and I was literally next door. Ryan Hopkins is my next door neighbor. So literally that wall behind me is the other side is his office. So we were just chatting, and I was like, oh, dang it, I got to go. I got this Zoom call. No, I think that's one of the things I love about this place, the collaborative nature, not just within coaches, and obviously within coaches, sport to sport, there's a lot of things that we share in common in spite of how different our sports may be. The same, he's hiring an assistant coach. I'm hiring an assistant coach. We're always recruiting. We're in the transfer portal. We're sharing, whether it's a great restaurant to take a recruit to, or a great pitch for someone coming from the South, or different things, different challenges maybe, but also different things that we can highlight, or similar things we can highlight. And I love that about this place. I love that about the people here, whether it's administration, academics, compliance people, our athletic training room, and our athletic trainers are all awesome. I mean, we're really blessed. We've got just great humans that are all hungry and want their programs and this department to rise up and go to that next level. And I think there's just a lot of great information being shared and perspective and a lot of pride. I mean, the run that we had, I can't tell you that, the messages, the emails, the texts, people driving up to LA to come to our games. We had, surprise, like, oh my gosh, look at, there's so-and-so and his family in the stands, here to watch us. That's just intangible stuff. You can't make happen unless it's genuine and heartfelt. And I do think that the people here really want this, to see this place go and be good and are and really supportive of each other in our own individual kind of battles to get to that.
So, perhaps better than anyone, you have seen San Diego State's, firsthand growth over the past, 2 decades, potential Power 5, Power 6 invite coming. Could you talk about that growth and what the future holds for the athletic department?
Yeah, I do feel, and there's obviously people here that have been here longer than I have, but I feel like I've been really in a cool kind of time and space within San Diego State athletics to see that growth and to witness not only within softball, but just again the kind of global movement towards that next step as a department. And I thought the irony was not lost on me that we played our super regional at Utah, because I feel like if there is a school that can be a direct, actual, like, this is the path. They were a Mountain West team when I got here, so they were in our conference. And I remember when they got when they went to the PAC, literally overnight, their recruiting changed. They built a new facility. The program just went to another level. And, over those last, 10 years or so that they've been in the PAC, for softball, they've had some great years. They hosted us. They had I think this was their second super regional that they've been to. in that kind of 10-year span since they've been in the Pac-12. And, they just to see what they've done, it's like, okay, that can be us. And I think actually even on a higher level, because we're in San Diego, right? Like, so we've got some weather things. We don't have to deal with the inclement stuff that they do, having snow and all that. So we have even maybe a better opportunity in our sport. I know every sport's different, but for softball, I think where we are is even, it's even another box that we can check that they can't. I think that it was really fun to me to kind of, I know Coach Amy, their head coach, and, to see where that program's gone. And like, here we are kind of like, maybe the stepchild for a while, but we're about to be full-fledged. And I think it was kind of fun to be a part of that and go back to the old school, battles of SDSU and Utah. And here we are at, super regional stage. It was pretty cool. But yeah, the future, Snapdragon Stadium, the basketball run, all this talk about the Power 5 stuff is, I'm tired of, I will say this, I'm tired of playing the guessing game. Just let me know when it's going to happen and where we're going and who we're playing. And then I'll get excited, because I've kind of ridden that roller coaster of like, okay, they're saying we're going to go Pac-12. Okay, now they're saying that we're going to go Big 12. And now they're saying that Pac-12 is going to explode. And these teams, it's like, okay, you know what? Just let me know when let me know when the dust is settled and where we need to make our flights to and who's going to be on our schedule, and we'll go from there. But regardless, it is an exciting time to be an Aztec, and that's for sure.
I think you just summed up everyone's feelings about that topic. But, last final question. In addition to your coaching, you participate in a lot of charity and instructional work, Visalia Miracle League, Women's Sports Foundation, Make-A-Wish. Why is it important for you to participate in those things as well?
All those things are character building. Those are things of, I think it's important for all of us to be able to give back and also to just gain some perspective. I know that a lot of times, we think about, charity work is giving to somebody else, and it is that, right? It's whether it's supporting children, people with disabilities, whether it's, whatever it is, homelessness, feeding the hungry, pick your charity of choice. The focus is on the beneficiaries, as it should be. But I always say that, like, when I do have those opportunities, like, I feel like I've gained. As much as it is about helping others, it also is a little selfish, because it feels really good to give back. It feels good to kind of remind myself how blessed and lucky I am with the health and the resources and the things that I have at my disposal. I think we all need that. It's important for our student athletes. We push and encourage community service for the same reason. It makes the community stronger, but it really makes our internal community stronger. It makes our people stronger, because, when we start to feel sorry for ourselves because we don't have fill in the blank. I don't have the latest and greatest iPhone. Oh my gosh, I'm so sad for you. My screen is broken on my iPhone. I need a new iPhone. And it's like, and you go and you spend time somewhere and you're like, okay, I'm going to stop talking about the screen on my iPhone, and I'm going to start being thankful for the fact that I have an iPhone, for the fact that I have an opportunity to be part of this. Again, we can gain our perspective on a lot of little different depths. I think that's why it's important, and it's powerful. It's humbling, and it's also just really allows for gratitude to shine bright and be thankful for what we do have. As cheesy as that sounds, it's true.
No, it was well said. I think it's 100% right. Coach, thank you for your time and, just carving out a little bit of your week to talk with us. It was great and insightful. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. I appreciate you guys, and go Aztecs.
Paul, that was our conversation with the head coach of SDSU softball. Really cool to talk to her, because, she's not someone that we've previously spoken to. And, as part of our expansion of our podcast into non-football measures, she was definitely high on our list of someone we wanted to talk to, especially, on the heels of the super regional. What were your thoughts on our conversation with her?
Again, I like what you just said. Echoing that. That's the again. Wanted to speak with her. I love, again, props, kudos to you for just the idea of the rebrand and finding an avenue to be able to do that. And so I look forward to covering softball more than we were able to, because there is an avenue for it. So that's very exciting. But for me, I really enjoyed watching their postseason run. We're getting a little bit older, not super old, but a little bit older, and to see young people do something that they're passionate about and that they love, like, I think that's why we do what we do, because we geek on that sort of thing. Watching the women play in the postseason and the joy in which they played in, that was the question I really was excited to ask. And coming from the interview, I got my answer, man. It's their head coach. That's where that joy comes from. So it was just a pleasure to get to know Coach Stacey a little bit, and then to see that that's where that joy of playing came from, because it was her personality was just terrific, and it was great. What about you?
I'm really interested by the parallels with the basketball team and Dutch.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, after the Final Four, Dutch was asked, I don't know how many dozen times, have you had a chance to soak it in and reflect back? And Dutch is like, no, I'm recruiting. I was taking recruiting visits during the Final Four. I was on plane going to visit.
Right.
And she was the same way. Like, we didn't have a break, right? We went right into recruiting and the transfer portal and this and that. So, not a lot of time to reflect or celebrate, although she did say she found some time. And then the head coach in waiting piece.
Yeah.
Was fascinating. I read that in her bio before the interview that she was a head coach in waiting, and I automatically thought Dutch had that had to have something to do with Dutch having that designation. And the fact that she used that to negotiate, got denied the first time, didn't get it, and then the next time got the head coach in waiting, I thought was fascinating. Smart move by her. Smart move by the administration too, to make sure to keep her here, because I'm sure other schools were calling to pry her away. And I think her loyalty, you could tell by her statements that she wants to be at one school for her entire coaching career, and that's San Diego State. And I think San Diego, the administration and the fans would love that.
I agree, and that's one of my own personal values. I think that there is a depth that can only come by being rooted in a place for an extended period of time, and it's not for everybody. And some places just don't allow it. But when it happens, I think it can bring about things that are just outside of the ordinary. And so for her to describe her experience in watching the athletic program grow, that's something that, there are other people on campus who could also talk about that, but she can as well, given the way that sports has gone, from no free agency, where everybody just kind of was forced to play with the team, to free agency, to I'm taking my talents to, what is it, West Beach? What did he say? He said, I'm taking my LeBron.
South Beach.
South Beach. I'm taking my talents to South Beach, to the transfer portal, to super teams being built and all that stuff. It is interesting to see something that's the other direction. And you talk about kudos to the administration. I think that one of the cool things about it, and I think you've seen it with Dutch, is just the honesty to be able to grow on the job. And I think that you find the right people, the people that you believe in, and it's okay to give them a little bit of a longer leash, so to speak, because of all of the commitment and things that they put in. Here's a question for you. Let's say they were going to do a head coach in waiting for the football team. Now, I think we can probably agree that there's nobody who deserves a designation quite yet, right? But if you had to give that designation, who are you giving it to?
Damn, that's a tough one.
Yeah, stumped him.
I would lean towards Maddox, because he's been with Brady the longest and he has the most responsibilities, right? Like there's no longer an associate head coach,
Right.
right? So then you look at the three. Well, actually, Coach
Yeah, I was
Deacon.
gonna say what he got. I was about to come back with Doug. I was like, really, what about Coach Deke? What about Coach Deke?
Yeah, no, I not. Then I started thinking about the three coordinators, and I thought of Deacon. I'm like, well, actually, I may have to change my answer.
Well, I got to argue the other one. So you tell me who you got, so then I can argue the other way.
I'll stick with my original with Maddox, but obviously, the reason I say Maddox is because he's got the most rapport with Brady.
Mm-hmm.
He's been there the longest. Ryan Lindley is newer as a coordinator, so I don't think you can put that tag on him at this point. Some of the other guys like a Kyle Hoke and a Demetrius Sumler who have good connections have done recruiting is fantastic. They haven't been at that coordinator level, so I don't know if they're there. So I'll stick with Maddox, but I mean you can make a great case for Deke too.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would in arguing it, I do think that there's a greater chance that a team is going to come calling for Maddox, at least with Deacon in that special teams role. And so I think that just part of the pitch is, hey, this could be there, and that might be part of it. But Doug Deacon is a walk-on at San Diego State. Before Ryan Lindley was the offensive coordinator, I'm writing an article about Doug Deacon, and he's like, yeah, anything you need. You want me to talk about Doug? I can do it for days. And multiple teammates have said the same thing. And so just being able to know the culture and the kind of kids who will succeed at San Diego State, he's the kind of person that you would want in that job, I think, long term, which, isn't to say that we're pushing out Coach Hope. Just thought it was a fun thing to think about who that would be. But jumping back to the softball, the conversation. How excited should Aztec fans be for next year with this team?
Based on her, answer to that question, she said they have pretty much most of their starters coming back, and they've got some great transfers. I think she mentioned three transfers and 3 freshmen coming in that she expects to participate. So in terms of team, composition, I think there's a lot of excitement to build on what they did this year. It's hard to say, just like when we talk about basketball, it's hard to say, oh, well, you went to the championship game this year. You have a lot of great returners and new players, so that means you're going to win the championship next year. It doesn't work out that way, right? You could be a better team, but not get as far in the tournament. It's just a one and done single elimination tournament. Like it's unpredictable, at least with softball. You've got a 3-game series or a regional multiple games, double elimination. So, but I think the excitement should be there, led by coach and the returning players, the transfers. There's no reason not to feel like a return to the super regional should be in the cards and potentially farther.
No, I think it's right. And I think the challenge with, I think, sports that are outside of, the big money making sports of basketball and football is it's really easy to want to say, okay, well, this is the way it is in basketball. And I'm not talking directly to your point, or in football, but that's kind of like your knowledge base, and so you go and you say, okay, well, Darian Trammell, Lamont Butler, Jaden Ledee, Micah Parrish, they should be better in the same situation next year because they have experience of succeeding in that regard. And it's interesting because I don't necessarily know that translates to softball. I mean, I know this is going to be an awesome topic for you. Look at the Padres. I mean, he's okay. I don't want to talk to you, Dodger fan, but I'm gonna have to. They're a super team on paper, but you can't build teams that way. It's just not how it works. I think that it'll be interesting to see how much it does translate. I think if you're looking at softball and you want to say you want to point to anything negative, you would just say they didn't beat UCLA. They didn't beat Utah.
Mhm.
They beat teams they should beat, and those other teams were the ones that beat UCLA. Now you can only play the teams that are on your schedule, but I am interested to see how much that translates, because it's just not a sport I'm very familiar with, and comparing it to baseball, which for obvious reasons, which I know a little bit more about, I don't think it always translates that way. On the other hand, sometimes it does, and I think that on paper you have women that are very young, and then you see them go and have such success. As Coach Stacey said, expectations have risen, right? You don't get to say we haven't been past the regionals. You don't get to say that anymore. And you start looking at things like hosting a regional. You start thinking about things of, how do we get past? How do we get to that? How do we get to the Women's College World Series? How do we do that? So all those things are there. But the nice thing about where this team is, as opposed to basketball, is they have so many people coming back. Men's basketball, they're losing so much that it's really, really challenging to think about, what that team is going to be, especially at this juncture. But with all of Cody Decker, it was unbelievable. And to get your catcher back at that key position, I think is just gigantic. Allie Light and Mountain West Pitcher of the Year, I believe, and coming back, and so, and then you get these transfers. And obviously she was not speaking, I don't believe, but there's a UCLA transfer who's coming home, gets to spend her last year. That was subsequent to when we had the conversation. So I definitely do think it should be really, really bright. I do think that it should be great. And I think that, if they can keep the momentum, San Diego is a vibrant high school softball town, and building that culture, I think could make, their stadium pretty fun to be at.
Anytime I can give a shout out to my high school alma mater.
I loved it.
Nice.
I loved it. Yeah.
Go Falcons.
There you go.
I was also really intrigued by asking her about her playing days.
Mm-hmm.
And those numbers, the intentional walks, and then her saying how she
never heard of that.
Home runs.
I've never heard of that. That was wild to me.
Yeah, I think I've seen players try to hit pitches that were intentional walks, but obviously there's no intentional walks in MLB anymore. Right. Like you get automatic.
Right.
But like 20, 30 years ago, I do remember some players getting hits, not home runs.
No.
But getting like slap hits, to the other side of the infield or whatever. But I thought that was wild.
I did too. I wish we had followed up with it, because talk about pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Your coach calls an intentional walk. She's already went yard in other games. You know this in the scouting report. You know what I mean? Like that's not even safe. So I thought that was pretty fun. That was really fun. And yeah, Didi Hernandez, man. I thought that was pretty funny. And I wish I had a way to join in on that part. Cracking me up.
Yeah. I also think her story about how she would go to her older brother's baseball practices and fit in and at times maybe look better than some of the boys.
Right. That she was 2 years younger than. Shows
her talent level at a young age. It would have been interesting to see her become a college basketball player. As she said, she had offers to play Division I college basketball, but she had better softball offers. So I think she chose the right path. But it's fun. And then also one last thing is accepting the San Diego State assistant coach job while you're at Beijing for the 2008 Olympics. That's a nice flex right there. I thought that was cool.
Well, it completely is. And I think coming full circle, when you spend so much time at a place, when you have that kind of resume, that's a choice. That's a choice that you have to make. And, I enjoyed, her insight into being at the absolute top of your sport. And now you have to teach other people. And, all these conversations of, thinking about, Magic Johnson as a head coach, Larry Bird as a head coach. obviously the things with Michael Jordan. I mean, they just couldn't translate. For 13 years, she is the hitting instructor, and she said it was a steep learning curve. And now that she's the head coach, she's like, I'm doing the pitching. And so I just thought that was an interesting dynamic. I also thought that the way she described coaching as an art while using some of the advanced statistics. And I personally love that conversation. I love that because they're the ones who actually have to put it into practice. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a computer model that'll spit out exactly what every person is supposed to do. And it's her job to make the decision of like, what do I teach? What do I not teach? What does it look like to actually get to the level of where they're at? And how do I do that in those incremental steps? And I like her describing it as not scientific necessarily in that sense, but it is an experiment and how she works with those kids. And I just thought, again, I think it's just fascinating because I think that's the world that we live in. No matter what you are in, no matter what you do, there's always going to be analytics. And if you do this, and if you do this, and you do this, but at the end of the day, it's people making decisions that what the quality comes down to. And lucky for San Diego State, they have a very, very high quality head coach running the softball team.
I think before we get out of here, we definitely need to spend some time talking about, the June 30th deadline and Lettergate. I guess you could call it.
Yeah,
Lettergate. The deadline is what, 2 days away as this episode comes out.
Mm-hmm.
A lot has been made about these letters. You wrote an article about reading the tea leaves. There's just many different ways to look at this, I guess, when as we come up towards the June 30th deadline. As I said, you wrote the article. You were on 760 earlier today, talking about it with John and Jim. What do you think is going to happen come Friday? Anything?
No, I mean, I don't. It's so hard. I mean, because I want to be really. I tried to be as crystal clear as I could with the title of saying I'm reading the tea leaves, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not speaking from sources. I'm trying to understand with the information that is available. Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm fully open to the idea. I honestly thought this would not be the story. I thought that when I first heard it and I heard all the things that it was about, I heard that San Diego State has initiated the conversation into that they're going to be leaving the Mountain West Conference. And I thought that the letter part would just kind of get cleaned up. And I did not think that here we are 10 days later or whatever it is since that first initial one came out, that this would be the topic of conversation. And as it just lingered, it just seems super easy. I mean, watch, we'll do it right now. Pretend you're the Mountain West and I'm San Diego State. Okay, ready? Hey, we intend effective June 30th or a date that we could agree upon. We're going to leave. And you say,
Great.
Oh, wait, no, we didn't mean that. We meant that we haven't given our notice yet.
Oh, but we think you have.
Yeah, but we haven't. Okay, so just I want you to be clear, we haven't. Cool, we accept it. Hey, everything's cleared up. It's that easy. I mean, you understand what I'm saying? And so the question that started fostering this article was asking okay, if it's super easy to clear this up, why haven't they cleared it up?
Yeah.
And that's where, and again, I have a default. I don't think people are unintelligent. I don't think they make stupid decisions on purpose. So my default is not to be oh, they just made a mistake. Okay, San Diego State makes a mistake by sending this letter out. And then the Mountain West makes an even bigger mistake in their reply. It just doesn't ring true to me. And so then that's where I came with the idea of that basically the Mountain West has agreed to give San Diego State 30 more days or, whatever they've talked about at these meetings. But they did it in the only way that they could, because their fans would have killed them. The Mountain West commissioner would never, ever have lived this down. Ever. Yeah. And so they had to find a way to be able to say yes, which is, I think, the right thing to do, given the history, given the fact that unlike USC and UCLA, this isn't a surprise. They've been open and honest with what's been going on. I think it's the right thing to do. Sincerely, I think you're going to your rest of your members and you're saying, hey, we're going to be all in this together. We understand there's other things, but if we work together, we're all going to be better. And yeah, we understand that that's going to mean opportunities for other schools, and so be it. Gosh, the amount of just like pride the remaining Mountain West members have shown, at least their fans on social media, and being able to like stick it to the Aztecs. That's a win for the Mountain West. That keeps them galvanized. That keeps them together. That keeps them building for the future. All because San Diego State wrote a letter. And so instead of thinking of it as like a win and somebody's got to lose, I think they thought of it as a win-win situation. And at least with the available data, which could change any moment, I think that's the best explanation for what's going on.
Yeah, we talked about this right when the first set of articles and letters came out. My day job, I'm a contracts guy. I write letters like this all the time. Now it's not in sports; it's more in defense contracts and to the government and such forth. But like letters like this go back and forth. Like this is a standard negotiation. It's a tactic that's used by everybody across all industries, regardless of whether it's sports or defense or whatever. And to me, I think wordplay in these letters at times is rather meaningless. And I think I mentioned that to you. It's just negotiating. I think it's become a bigger thing. People are too hung up on what one word says. Like I think I saw a lot of people hung up on formally notice. Like that doesn't really mean anything.
Right.
You could look at it so many different ways. Ultimately, we're going to see what happens. June 30th is going to come and go. Whether there's more letters or a public statement or a public release, we'll see. Whether there's nothing and things will just play out after June 30th and into July, we'll see. But yeah, I think this Lettergate has become a bigger thing than probably deserves. But it's more stuff for people to talk about. Even Coach told us, she's tired of the roller coaster.
Right.
She wants to know who she's going to be playing in 2024, what her schedule is going to be, what conference, all this back and forth about, what's going to happen. I think everybody is kind of ready for it to end.
Other way that I thought about taking the article that I wrote is that San Diego State would like to be able to pay this off later, the 17 million, maybe through litigation and stuff like that. This gives them the opportunity to kind of punt that a little bit down the road when that would become due. But it still, to me, doesn't explain why the Mountain West didn't just clear it up. Like I cannot come up with another reason why the Mountain West would be like, no, yes, you did. We cannot wait. We cannot wait for another week. You're out. Yeah. Like it just doesn't make it. I can't. Like, okay, thank you. Please give us notice by June 30th. Simple, no ambiguity. No one's even having this conversation anymore. Like,
yeah.
And that's why again I'll ultimately landed. But I think I can speak for myself. I think that's the third article about conference realignment that I've written about. I just don't like the topic. I don't like writing about conjecture and all that kind of stuff, even though it's fun. Even though, it gets views and all that kind of stuff. It's not, I'd honestly, sincerely much rather be talking about women's softball, in all sincerity than, unless I have information, right? I think I can agree that like, I'm excited about, the summer kind of moving on, thinking about, our preview articles, being able to talk about actual sports, and on the court and stuff like that. I think, and on the field, I think is really good. One more thing, man. We got all kinds of stuff. Look at this, Magoon Gwath.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere. So we've interviewed him. So you've heard, Andres, obviously we've heard the interview and all this stuff. So, I mean, what is your kind of just gut picture of that pickup?
He definitely screams future in terms of like, he's not going to be playing this year. I think it seems like it's going to be a redshirt year, development project, whatever word you want to use. which isn't a bad thing, I think, because I think they've got their set 8 or 9 players that are going to be playing this year. And the only way someone would crack that would be if it was like a grad transfer, an experienced guy coming in that could fill in as like the starting center and maybe move Jaden Ledee to 4. So I don't think they still have one more scholarship open. So I think leaving that open for someone like that may come along at some point is smart. But I look at him as a project. But as he said to you, he thinks, he could. I think he says he models his game after KD and Paul George, which tells me that he likes to shoot. He likes to be more perimeter oriented. He likes to use his size, maybe to post up and shoot over guys, instead of maybe a guy that's going to be posting up and shooting jump hooks or things like that in the paint. Obviously, the evolution of basketball has led that way, regardless of what size you are. But he's 7 foot. He did mention that he blocking shots, his length is one of his strengths. So if he can become a guy that can play on the perimeter, shoot, play make, and then defend interior, I mean, I think that's a guy in 2 to 3 years that could be a starting center for a really, really good San Diego State team.
I think that's spot on, and I find the speed in which he goes from. So he said to us that he's from in Texas. He's at Trinity High School. They want him to be a back to the basket guy. He doesn't fit with him. He transfers to Veritas, which lives in the LA area, and within 1 month, Oregon State, USC, Villanova. So he gets on the radar, and then it goes away. He gets an injury. He's injured, right? And then State sees him twice, and he's on the national runner-up. And he's supposed to be on campus next week. Is that right?
July 5th.
July 5th. He's supposed to be on campus next week. I mean, that's a wild turn of events. Yeah. I mean, there's a welcome thing on Instagram. I believe it's from September where he's in Veritas. No recruitment at all. 0 September. I was fascinated by his conversation about, like, I'm 6 foot when I'm 13. And then I'm gonna get these wrong, but I'm 6'3", then I'm 6'6", then I'm 6'8". Now I'm 6'11 3/4. I weigh 190 pounds. I want to get in the weight room. I'm a gym rat. That's what I do. Only except when I was injured, it's like the only time I've never not been in the gym.
Yeah.
And for him to just be able to say, like, I'm growing into my body. I'm figuring that out. Every time I think I start getting a hold of things, right? Because, I mean, you want to talk about there not being like a technique for you to follow. How many lengthy 6'11" guys are there who people can say, like, this is what your feet should be, this is how you're, it's just going to be different. And then I thought, so I thought, again, it's just super intriguing. Like, what is the ceiling for this kid that he could go from nothing to that? I love that it seems like he has the right mentality, which is, he said, what I'm going to be working on is gaining weight and doing everything that I already do faster. And that really is going to determine where he plays. I mean, you think of Malik Pope, who thin rail guy in Kevin Durant-esque in high school, top recruits in the country, has some injuries, and he just was not quite quick enough to exist on the perimeter. Great player, great Aztec, but just to be that, like, next level kind of like guy who can, like, legitimately be out on the perimeter, he just wasn't quite quick enough. And then, but he, again, a great player, super fun to watch, great guy. Loved when he would always, walk through him and Zylan Cheatham. They'd come to every football game, and they were just celebrities walking around the field and the concourse and whatnot. And so it's no knock on it. It's not easy to be that size and to play that role, which is why Kevin Durant is a unicorn. I mean, there's not anyone like him, The fact that he's aware that he's going to be a post player who's going to be inside unless he can do things and be quick enough. That's where it's at. That's what he has to figure out. And that's already in his mind at this young age. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, exciting times on the Mesa, as always, even as we go through this summer period where there's no games happening, but a lot going on in different areas, obviously. That's going to do it for us. Thanks, guys, for listening. We appreciate it as always. Hope you guys enjoyed the interview with the head coach of softball. Make sure to like and subscribe on all your favorite platforms, and we will talk to you guys next time. You are listening to the SDSU podcast presented by the East Village Times with your hosts Andre Hagberdian and Paul Garrison.